Hey y'all, hey, it's your girl Morgan Renee. We're tuning in for another reading of, story time with Mormai. Reading Trying to Sleep in the Bed You Made. It's by two authors, they're best friends, Virginia D. Berry and Donna Grant. We are in chapter 3. If you're new to the channel, or even if you're not and you're just needing to catch up on some of these reads, make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel. It's my name, Morgan Myers, Morganmyers. You'll see the red logo with the yellow inside that stands for my company, Mormai, because you want more of my entertainment, readings, crochet. And don't mind the hat, I'm not done with the ruffles, so that's why I'm probably looking half looking. But let's hop on into it. I'm not going to do a recap today. Just go catch the replays, like I said, on my YouTube channel. All right? So in chapter 3, shared thoughts and separate dreams. Marcus raced his bike through the rain-slick streets, dodging buses, weaving between cars. Horns honked and drivers cussed in his wake. He can kiss my ass. Yeah, Marcus had accepted a baseball scholarship to Mississippi State, but then the Baltimore Orioles offered him a spot in their farm system and changed everything. He tried to discuss it with his father, but Booker didn't see anything to talk about. Okay. Wait, so he got a scholarship to Mississippi State, but then the Baltimore Orioles, which is like a professional. Okay. Since the day of the funeral, the echo of Freddie's potential and promise rang in Marcus's ears, drove him to excel. Baseball wasn't a game. It was a debt Marcus had to pay. And when his mother wandered the streets asking strangers if they seen Freddie Carter, I'm going to beat the devil out of that boy when I find him, Marcus would search for her because he knew that what was wrong with her was his fault. The first time she disappeared was in the middle of cooking smothered pork chops, Freddie's favorite dinner. Marcus came home from baseball practice and found the kitchen smoky and the meat scorched to the pan. Fear, anger, and guilt that weighed on him like a ball and chain made his heart thump wildly as he searched the house, then the neighborhood. He found her staring in the window of Linden Photography Studios. They must have took it down, she had said, a little peeved, and Marcus realized she meant the portrait taken the Christmas Freddie was 10 and he was 7. Marcus looked at the space where the picture had been, but now he saw the reflection of his mother, hair uncombed, still wearing her fuzzy house shoes and holding the gravy cake wooden spoon. He wanted to take his bat to the window, smash it with all his might, but he knew that wouldn't change anything, so he talked to her, became Freddie for her long enough to lead her home. Now Ethel Carter lived more and more in her own world, but Booker still called Cancer C and believed she'd come back to herself, so there was no point in discussing it. By the time Marcus got to Gail's house, he was soaked and had replayed the fight with his father a dozen times. I'm no kid. I'm man enough to know what I gotta do. By junior year, the Daily News took notice of Marcus in the high school sports column. Booker would wear out his paper, showing it to everybody, even people along the mail route. When Marcus was named the all-city team and scouts appeared to watch him, baseball became more than a game for all those people, too. He represented their best chance to leap from the familiar but unremarkable same old to the shimmering fame they longed to feel even from a distance. And Marcus added the weight of their dreams to his burden because he deserved to carry the heaviest load. Marcus ducked under the carport, chained the 10-speed to the handrail, wrung the water from his t-shirt, and laid on the side door buzzer. No one in this house is deaf. Pat opened the door, and he strolled past her. Gail here? Water from his shirt trickled onto the hall floor as he paced. You could at least say hello. Pat reared back, crossed her arms, and waited. Marcus stopped pacing and faced Pat. She sure looks different. Still on the round side, but packaged better. Definitely more deuce and a quarter than vet, but she used to look like a surplus tank from the Salvation Army. Instead of husky boy dungarees and those ugly navy and mud striped t-shirts she used to wear, she had on khakis and a pink eyes eye. What are you staring at? Pat asked. How come you cut your hair so short? Marcus reached for her head, but Pat sidestepped him. Ain't as long as dust on a jug, he teased, but he kind of thought it suited her. And since when did you become a beauty consultant? I was just asking. I guess it looks okay. It had taken some time for Pat to get used to it herself, but she had no choice. Her first night at Southridge, she sat on the side of the bed, jar of afro sheen between her knees, cornrowing before she went to sleep. Beth, her perky blonde roommate from Connecticut, breezed in from the shower and stared at Pat's braids while she was watching an episode of National Geographic and wondering what native ritual came next. Pat felt like dirt, and by the next afternoon found the one black barber near campus, had her mid-sized afro trimmed teeny-weeny, and vowed never to be caught so completely exposed again. Pat touched her hair self-consciously and glared at Marcus, waiting for him to crack on her again. "What?" he glared back. "Nothing," Pat snapped and walked into the kitchen. Marcus shrugged and followed her. In the rarefied, uptight, buttoned-down atmosphere of Southridge, Pat's brain ceased to be a liability. She had some catching up to do when she arrived, but it didn't take her long to get up to speed. The school was filled with second- and third-generation Ridgies, but she'd always been the odd one out and adjusted quickly to the awkwardness of being one of a handful of black girls in the school. "Patricia? She's so nice. Not like some of them. She's the one whose parents, Dr. and Mrs. Reed, were killed in a boating accident off the Chesapeake Bay." Verna, thankfully, had abandoned even the occasional pretense at motherhood, so Pat was free to concoct a family history she felt was more acceptable. Most of the scholarship girls stayed to themselves and ranked on the spoiled, flat-ass, frill-using white girls who made them feel like having a butt that hiked up the back of your uniform made you some kind of mutant, and parents who didn't work in offices, travel frequently, or play golf weren't trying hard enough. Pat figured she could have hung out with the poor black girls in Queens, so she mingled freely and soaked up the Southridge ways. She mimicked the crispness of Ridgie's speech and dress, resurrected Ma Ray's real pearls to wear casually with Oxford cloth shirts, and sometimes heard Oreo whispered in her wake. Edwina Lewis, who transferred in her junior year, was a misfit too, because there was no category at the Southridge for rich and black. The Lewis family maid had preceded Edwina's arrival, and she thoroughly cleaned Edwina's room before the dorm director found out and asked her to leave. Edwina's parents had parlayed a $5,000 Model Cities grant into the largest commercial cleaning service in Connecticut. Pat showed Edwina how to make hospital corners and do laundry and taught her the ins and outs of boarding school life. Edwina accepted Pat's help through the rough spots, but they never became really close. Pat's eagerness to fit in was rewarded with invitations to white classmates' homes, however, where she received a whole other education. On weekends in Old Greenwich with Beth, Pat knew she was a novelty act, but she enjoyed the surprised looks on the faces of the Morgans' guests when they met best friend from school. Pat picked up a fine game of tennis, played on the family's courts, and perfected her poker face, leaning to act like she'd grown up socializing with families who owed banks. When classmates went on about the debutante season, she pretended she knew what they were talking about, then looked it up for later. Pat kept her eyes in her head, even when she realized the art on the walls by painters she read about for art history. Never mind that she had nothing that resembled a date while she was at school. She figured things wouldn't have been any better at Jackson and refused to acknowledge the achy emptiness that embraced her when she saw others holding hands or making out in the shadowy doorways. While secretly craving Teddy Pendergrass, she swooned along with the rest over Paul McCartney, and eventually she lost track of the Soul Brothers Top 20. Pat hadn't seen Marcus in almost a year. "He looks the same, just bigger." "No one's home but me. Gail's getting her hair done for the prom night." Pat swung open the refrigerator door. "You want—" She stopped, noting the low growl of thunder in the distance. "You want a soda?" She held up a root beer in one hand and a cola in the other. "Root beer." Gail said Pat was acting sedity, but she don't seem bougie to me. Oh, this is Pat. This is Marcus thinking in his head. "Root beer." Gail said Pat was acting sedity, but she don't seem bougie to me. She grabbed a handful of ice cubes from the freezer and poured the soda into a glass, remembering how she would have given anything for ice during her stay in France. When did she stay in France? The second semester of her junior year, Pat studied in Paris, where her fluid, well-accented French made her popular by both French girls and Ridgies who needed a translator, while her brown skin and American passport made her quite the celebrity. On the night of her 18th birthday, a bunch of the girls treated her to a rowdy dinner at Bacamont, a crowded, noisy bistro where she ate steak fries and sipped her first Bordeaux. Smoke from the gitanes she puffed non-stop merged into the blue-gray cigarette cloud that made the joint seem magical, and she felt liberated, as totally jazzed as the saxophone's euphoric exclamation in the background. Coming of age in this foreign place with people who knew only what she wanted them to know about her made her feel unique and special instead of just odd. And she, too, abandoned the little girl nobody wanted to claim. And now, after 3 expansive years, she couldn't seem to make Gail understand why she didn't want to hang out at Green Acres Mall. Instead, she rode the F train to Manhattan and browsed in Rizzoli, wandered through the Met, and drank cafe all late. I'm probably not saying that right. Drank cafe all late in the Village. She couldn't say she'd grown. And St. Albans didn't fit anymore. She couldn't say she wished she'd accepted Miss Cook's offer of a summer at Martha's Vineyard to help her finish working her book. If it hadn't been raining, she wouldn't be here today. Pat handed Marcus the soda and sat back at the kitchen table. What are you doing out in the rain anyway? Shouldn't you be home checking your tucks and polishing your shoes? The mention of home relit Marcus's fuse. He acts like I'm a damn kid. What are you talking about? Pat asked. He told her about the Orioles offer. But all my father could say was, nobody in the Carter family been to college, boy, and you gonna be the first. Shit, I ain't a damn boy, and it ain't his life. He spent his dragging a mailbag and dodging dogs, and he ain't gonna run mine. The furious tattoo of raindrops on the aluminum carport underscored Marcus's anger. At least he cared enough to drag the bag around for you. I know that, but he think he know it all, and he don't. Not about this. Marcus straddled a kitchen chair backwards and took a swig of soda. What do you want to do? Pat props her elbows on the table. See? How come he couldn't ask me that? Marcus slammed down his glass, sloshing foam onto the table. Marcus, if you still saying ask, you need to go to college, quick. Don't you get on my case, too. I've been dreaming baseball since I was a kid. Now the big boys say we want you. How am I supposed to say no? I could break my leg in college and then I'm screwed. You could break your leg in the minors. At least I'd be trying to get where I want to go. I could go to college and play ball, and when I get out, nobody will be looking for me. They looking for me now. I got the chance now. I don't know about later. Nobody knows about later, Marcus. But a baseball player with a broken leg and a college degree probably has a better shot in life than a plain old broken leg, almost big-time baseball player. Pat flinched as a silent spike of light flashed outside. Yeah, and you get shit-ass eyes on a sure thing. Sometimes you gotta gamble, but you can't tell my father that. He only sees what he wants to see. Hell, he still acts like there ain't nothing wrong with Ma. Pat had heard Mrs. Carter wasn't any better, but she and Marcus never brought it up, and she of all people knew not to ask questions about someone's mother. A booming thunderclap shook the house, and Pat jumped up and flicked off the light. What you do that for? Marcus asked. I gotta go, Pat stammered, her heart pounding. She tried to control it, but electrical storms still made her tremble just like she was a 4-year-old in Swan City. You scared? Marcus was amazed. He'd never seen Pat act afraid of anything. She was the one who stayed calm and called for help that day. A bolt of lightning lit up the room. Pat muffled a whimper and dashed down the hall and into the basement. Marcus followed. He groped along the wall and inched down the dark stairwell. When his eyes adjusted to the ashy gray light filtering through the frosted basement window, he saw Pat huddled against the flowered bolsters on the studio couch, her knees drawn up to her chest, rocking. For a second, she looked at him like the scruffy kid with the stick-figure hair and sad eyes, and he had the urge to protect her. Remember the time we found that kitten and hid it in the storeroom? Marcus slid onto the couch and chuckled. It was okay till Miss Saunders went looking for a jar of tomatoes. Oh, Lord. Pat let the memory replace her fear momentarily. When that cat rubbed up against her leg, she hollered and dropped the jar. Then the cat screeched and she knocked all the jars off the shelf getting out of there. Gail and I cleaned up tomatoes and chow for a week with her fussing the whole time. Yeah, man, my daddy made me go to bed at 7 o'clock for longer than that. Marcus leaned into the cushions. Pat stretched her legs. You were almost as mad as him then as you are now. Marcus thought for a second. I know he wants what's best for me, but the crackle of thunder and lightning interrupted him, and Pat balled up again. Marcus put his arm around her shoulder. Ain't nothing coming down here for you, he said gently. Pat, always embarrassed by this fear, was more ashamed in front of Marcus, but she couldn't control it, so she leaned into the unfamiliar curve of his arm and sat quietly, trying to calm herself. Aside from an occasional hug, no one had really held her since Ma Ray, but beyond the comfort, she felt an excitement that was different. She stayed still, afraid if she moved, the feeling would go away. The gurgle of rain rushing through the downspout filled the silence. Regaining some composure, Pat said, You never answered me, Marcus. What do you want to do? Marcus idly massaged her arm, vaguely aware that he liked the dense softness against his palm and the fresh smell of her hair. He started to answer, but when she looked up at him, his brain stalled and his eyes locked on her mouth, full, brown lips that he had never noticed before, and the next thing he knew, he was kissing them. Ooh! The instant his mouth brushed her own, it was like he tapped a root Pat didn't know was at her core. Marcus's grip on her arm tightened. She closed her eyes, cupped his cheek in her hand, and they kissed again. A warm syrup oozed through her body. Hold on, let me go back because I got distracted in my mind. I wasn't really paying attention to what I just read. The instant his mouth brushed her own, it was like he tapped a root Pat didn't know was at her core. Marcus's grip on her arm tightened. She closed her eyes, cupped his cheek in her hand, and as they kissed again, a warm syrup oozed through her body. Pat let her eyes flutter open, but was horrified when she realized she was making out with her best friend's boyfriend, and before she lost herself completely, in a place she had no business being, she jerked away and stood up while she could still find the door. I think I'm okay now. The storm's letting up, she said, adjusting her shirt. Marcus sprang up too and thrust his hands deep in his jeans pockets. Yeah, I gotta get home. What the hell did I just do? Pat had never been like a girl to him. She was just Pat, somebody he could talk to and who didn't expect him to be anything but what he was. I ain't no dog, so what was my lips doing all over her face? He stared down at his pumas, unable to look at her. I'll talk to Gail later. He took the stairs two at a time and reached the top just as Gail unlocked the door. Marcus, what are you doing here? You're not supposed to see me. She quickly unwound the dry cleaner's bag that protected her hair, revealing a tower of curls laced with pearls and ribbons just as Pat appeared in the hall. All that high-class education and you still hiding from thunder and lightning? Well, now that you're here, check out the hair. Gail twirled to give them a full view. Feeling trapped and wrong, Pat mustered a compliment and headed for the bedroom. Marcus pulled a damp envelope from his hip pocket and handed it to Gail, only half looking at her. I came to show you this. In a moment, Gail shrieked and danced, waving the paper. We did it! Oh, Marcus, you're going to be famous. She threw her arms around his neck and bounced excitedly. Gail wasn't an academic star, but she was a quick study, and she recognized early in her tenure as Marcus's thing the relative ease and enormous power of reflected light. She basked in it, and she liked it a lot. With the help of its glow, Gail became the prettiest, the most popular, the captain of the cheerleaders. At games, especially away games, she would slip on his jacket between cheers like she was cold, but it was really to make sure everybody knew she belonged to the star, number 23. When he made a hit or scored a run, she cheered extra hard and felt charged like she'd done something special too. You'll win the World Series. I knew it. I told you. She kissed his cheek. What's it like in Baltimore? Whoa, Marcus unhinged her from his neck. I don't even know if I'm going to take it. I did say yes to that scholarship. What are you talking about, not going to take it? This is all you ever wanted. I can't wait to be at Yankee Stadium and hear them say your name over the loudspeaker. I'll be screaming and waving. Oh, Marcus, I'm so proud of you. And she was, but as she hugged him, she got a flash of the wives sitting in their box during World Series games she watched with him. They were decked out, wore big diamonds and the occasional fur on the chilling night. She had imagined herself there, and now she was on her way. For Gail, it was perfect. Marcus was talented, popular, fine, and he gave her the respect Loretta told her she had to demand. Gail heard other girls talk about their boyfriends and what they had to do to keep them, and truth be told, some of them bragged about being real women, like giving it up ever made anybody grown. She also saw them disappear from school and turn up 5 months later buying Pampers at the Key Food. She told Marcus that would happen to her, and he didn't tell her he had to give... She told Marcus that wouldn't happen to her, and he didn't tell her she had to give him the cherry or he'd find himself another pie. Not that he didn't have the appetite. He'd been close enough to smell it, had nibbled around the edges, content for the time being with the gropes and feels Gail permitted above the waist, but she wasn't cutting him a slice, so he had agreed to wait on dessert. Her girlfriend said she was lucky, and maybe she was, but she intended to take lucky all the way to the altar. Gail's once mentioned thoughts of art school and developing her talent were long forgotten, stashed in the back of a closet stuffed with the latest, most stylish clothes her parents could afford. She still sketched, even did some artwork for the yearbook, but she decided that wasn't really her calling. She was meant to be appreciated by someone who could afford to, just like the women who her mama cleaned for and who lived in the building Daddy kept scrubbed and spit shined. Gail read Ebony and Jet religiously, devouring each word of social chit-chat and every picture of the parties, celebrity weddings, and famous homes they featured, planning for the day she and Marcus would be among the the prominent couples. For Gail, it had never mattered what team or what city. That was up to Marcus. Black prince, Black princes might be scarce, but they were going to be royalty. Marcus grinned for the first time all day. His father had deflated him, but Gail's excitement pumped him up. She believed in him the way he wanted to believe himself, and her vision of the future filled in the blanks, making it seem possible that his sweat and sacrifice would be enough. I ain't made the Orioles yet. It's a rookie league in the boonies. Yeah. It's going to take you about a minute. You really think so? Marcus asked. I know so, Marcus. It's perfect. I can't wait to tell Brenda. She's always bragging about her boyfriend Dexter and how he's a specialist 4th class in the Army. Like that's a big deal. We'll tell everybody tonight and celebrate. But you have to go. I got to get ready. I'm going to be so pretty for you. She kissed him on the lips, marched him toward the door, and ran up to the bedroom. Patty, it's happening. Gail picked up a hand mirror and checked out her prom due from all angles in the mirror above the dresser. I knew it would. This is just the beginning. Soon Marcus and I will have a fierce wedding with a white Rolls Royce and maybe a carriage and horses. And then we'll have a big old house built with marble bathrooms and chandeliers. Gail Denise Saunders, do you hear yourself? Pat sat on a corner of her bed. Do you think he might be throwing away his education? Have you even once considered what's best for Marcus? She had meant to say that. She was planning to joke around while Gail got dressed like they used to, but she heard Marcus's name and something that was still too hot exploded. And you know what's best for everybody, right? Gail yanked open a dresser drawer and pitched a strapless bra, ivory lace panties, and a package of pantyhose on the bed. She met all those rich people, and it's like I'm not good enough for her anymore. I didn't say that, but all you're doing is counting his money and what he can buy you with it, Pat snapped. When they were girls, the small bedroom had been plenty big for shared thoughts and separate dreams, but they were almost women now. Pat's dreams stepped on Gail's toes, and Gail's hopes just rubbed Pat the wrong way. And suppose Marcus doesn't marry you. What are you going to do? He's going to marry me because we're in love, but I wouldn't expect you to know what that means because it's not in a daggone textbook. Gail tied a nylon scarf around her hair, carefully tucking in straight curls. Believe me, I know more than what's in a book. For instance, I know being cute won't get you over forever. What would you know about being cute or having a boyfriend? You dress like a bulldagger and you act like you know more than anybody. No man is going to want you making him feel stupid all the time. It's going to be hard knowing so much and being all by yourself. I may be alone, but I'll be able to take care of myself. What are you planning to do the time you graduate and when you become Mrs. Marcus Batten and Reggie Jackson Carter, huh? Or are you just going to sit on your lazy behind and wait? And what if he never makes it? You still going to marry him then? Oh, he's going to make it all right. I know Marcus will do it, and I'll be right there with him. Gail snatched her underwear and her robe. Look, I don't have time for this. A ray of after-storm sun sliced the space between them. I have to get ready because I'm not going to let you spoil tonight. She stormed off to the bathroom. Pat's hands shook as she felt like her head would burst. Why the hell did I start that? What Marcus and Gail do is none of my business. But Marcus had been her friend as long as he'd been Gail's. She threw herself on the bed, head under the pillow, tasting the salty sweet of his lips, feeling his hot, wet, hard body. I can't stay here this summer. She wanted to stuff her clothes in a bag and go right then, but she went downstairs because she couldn't think in that room, and she didn't want to be there when Gail finished her shower. In a little while, Joseph and Loretta came home looking like two cats who just finished the canary sandwich. We got it, Joseph whispered to Pat. It purrs like a kitten and it's red. They told Gail they were going to look for drapes, but they really went to Hempstead to look at a Mustang they'd seen in the classifieds. It was used, but Joseph said Macon had a buddy who detailed cars, and he cleaned it up like new before graduation. A bunch of Pat's school friends got cars for graduation. Beth even got a new Fiat. After commencement, Uncle Joe and Aunt Loretta, gleaming and proud, presented Pat a box wrapped in a glossy white paper and tied with a gold satin bow. In it, she found a calendar watch with a black snakeskin band and the date engraved on the back. Then Joseph handed her an envelope with $200 saving bonds. A little something for you to build on, he said. It was the most wonderful present anybody ever gave her, and she nearly cried because she was happy and because she had the nerve to keep them away from her prep school friends, ashamed of these people who made her family. Let me see your knees. Come on, Etta, just a peek. Uncle Joe chased Aunt Loretta around the kitchen table. She giggled and told him, "Get on away from here, Joe." But she let him catch her. Pat hadn't seen him so silly in a long time. Fortunately, Loretta went up to fuss and print with Gail, and Joseph followed them both around taking pictures, so nobody noticed that Pat made herself scarce. Marcus arrived on the dot of 6, corsage in hand, looking handsome in his white tux. Neighbors gathered as driver and white stretch, a present from Uncle Macon, waited at the curb to whisk the couple to their first ever evening of dinner and dancing. Gail wasn't about to let her fight with Pat ruin this night. Arm in arm, she posed with Marcus, lovely in her slinky white halter gown. And what if he never makes it? Echoed in her mind, but she smiled sweetly, looked at Marcus adoringly, and as Loretta dabbed at tears and Joseph snapped away, the questions faded. Despite Pat's protest, Joseph pulled her into a picture with the couple. Marcus stood behind Gail, his arms wrapped around her, and Pat was at their side, an awkward appendage with a brittle smile. Have fun, she said, a little too brightly, as she faded back into the woodwork. Just one more, so Uncle Macon can have one. Joseph could barely focus. When he looked at Gail through the lens, dressed in an evening gown and all made up, he realized she wasn't his baby girl anymore. As much as he tried not to show it, he saw a woman, and he wasn't ready. He worried about Gail. What was she going to do after high school? She had applied to York Community College because it was close and because he and Loretta insisted, but he knew the next graduation she was planning was from Marcus's girlfriend to his wife. There was nothing wrong with Marcus. He'd grown up to be a fine young man, even with all his troubles, but that wasn't the point. Sometimes, late at night, when there was nothing to interrupt his thoughts except the occasional creak of the house, he wondered if they'd done right by Gail. Yes, they spoiled her, but he wanted her so badly. Yes, they kept a lot of cruel reality as far from her as they could, but what was wrong with protecting her? Yes, there was something they needed to tell her. He thought there'd be time, but here she was, looking grown, and he wanted to tell her to go back in the house and wash that mess off her face because he wasn't ready for her to be a woman. He wasn't through raising her yet. Joseph blinked back tears and took the picture. Then he kissed Gail, palmed Marcus an extra $50 and a goodnight handshake, and said, "Don't do nothing foolish, and make sure she has a good time." Loretta and Joseph reminisced over pound cake and ice cream, then, still giggling and jiving, excused themselves and went up to their bedroom. Pat spent the evening on the phone, tracking down this cook on Martha's Vineyard, and was glad she still needed help with her manuscript. She felt guilty because she had promised to spend the summer with Gail, but this was an emergency. Pat wandered through the house like she wouldn't be back for a long time. She examined the cuttings rooting in old jars on the kitchen windowsill. Plant cuttings. Stray coupons cluttered the countertops, and stuck in every cranny were the pairs of salt and pepper shakers Aunt Loretta collected. Pat went to the ceramic pumpkin cookie jar, lifted the lid that she and Gail had cracked and tried to glue together with Elmer's, and got 2 fig Newtons. In the dining room, she stood behind Uncle Joe's chair and remembered her first Sunday dinner there. Reverend Hobson was their guest, and his blessing had lasted about forever. The floor creaking upstairs interrupted Pat's thoughts. So that's what seeing her knees meant. As kids, she and Gail just thought it was Uncle Joe's way of annoying Aunt Loretta. She smiled and moved on to the living room. The plastic slip cover crackled as she sat on the sofa and pulled 2 photo albums from the shelf under the end table. Loretta had made a point of telling everybody about her new French provincial living room suite when they bought it, but Pat hadn't seen anything like it in France. Pat leafed through the pages and the years, remembering outings and holidays. She planned to select a few pictures, but even though she was in many of them, she felt like they weren't hers to take. She'd been a welcome guest for many years, but she was 18 and it was time to leave, so she didn't overstay her welcome. She turned out the lamp and curled up on the couch to rest a minute. She'd already packed and checked the train schedule. In the morning, she'd tell them her plans to be on her way. Keys rattling in the front door awakened Pat. Gail sailed in, dangling her shoes in her hand. She was startled when Pat sat up. "Looks like you had a good time." Pat knew it sounded lame, but she wasn't looking for a fight anymore. "Uh-huh, we had a ball." Gail wasn't sure if Pat was being sarcastic, but she wasn't in the mood to care. "Marcus gave me this." She crooked her hand, the slender over nails manicured red, so Pat could see the pearl with 2 diamond chips on her left finger. He said it was to hold the place for something bigger. Neither of them seemed to know what to say or do. The squeals and hugs that used to be so natural just didn't come. "It's beautiful, Gail," Pat said quietly. "I know you don't believe I love Marcus." Gail put her hand on her hip. "I believe you. I'm really glad you're happy, Gail." Pat stood and massaged the creases the plastic covers had left in her cheek. "By the way, I talked to Miss Cook. She really needs me to help her finish the book, write the index and stuff, so I'm going to Martha's Vineyard for the summer. I'm leaving this morning." "This morning? That's not what you were going to do yesterday. Dag, why you even bother to coming home?" "Things changed, that's all." "Yeah, well, whatever." Gail scurried upstairs to show her parents the ring, and Pat sat in the chair near the picture window to wait for sunrise. That's the end of chapter 3, so it looks like they are growing apart. We're going to see how juicy this gets. Thank y'all so much for tuning in to Story Time with More of My. Again, if you need to catch up on this reading or any past readings, I've read Richard Wright's Black Boy. I've read The Coldest Winter Ever by Sister Soldier. I've read Feeding the Soul by Tabitha Brown. I've read, Recapturing the African Mind by Bruce Bridges. I have a number of great reads on my YouTube channel, so follow me, Morgan Myers, MorganMyers. And again, thank y'all for tuning in. Peace.